Year one, it was me in one truck. We did 996 treatments that year, but I did every single one of them. If you give me the blueprint and you just show me what I got to do, I got to read that book, I got to learn those skills. All right, bet, let's go. For a long time, I was the mosquito guy, right? When I'm doing my local networking, something shifted in my mind. Well, I'm not the mosquito guy anymore. I just didn't think through everything. I rushed. I was trying to solve an immediate problem and I rushed through the process. We have the potential to be successful. The question is, do we have the capacity for it?
Do you think you could have built the business that you've built if you went backwards and just started it from scratch? Do you ever get tired of hearing all the glamorous sides of entrepreneurship and want someone just to give you a clear picture of what's really going on? Well, Matthew is a multi-unit and multi-brand franchisee. He's owned as many as 6 territories over the last 8 years with his Mosquito Joe's franchise, and also now owns a Groovy Hughes franchise. In this episode, we dive into the structure of his business and how he scaled it. What are some of the challenges that come with operating multiple territories, and key mistakes that he made and learning lessons that you can use to save yourself a lot of money. Now, he breaks down his business and tactics in a level of detail that we really haven't gone into on the podcast. So this will be an exciting episode for you to learn the ins and outs of running a larger and more complex operation and what things you need to know as you are scaling your own franchise empire. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Franchise Empire Show. I got Matthew here. What's up, man? Thanks for coming on.
Hey, appreciate you. It is an honor and a pleasure.
Likewise. So, I think a cool place to start would be give us, we'll dive a little bit more into kind of how you got there, but give us an overview of, like, you own multiple different brands, which is unique, but just give us an overview of the brands you own, kind of your business and how it's structured right now. Like who's on your team? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, no, really good question. So Mosquito Joe is my oldest brand. We've been operating that for 8 years. This is season 8 right now. And then we just launched Groovy Hughes Paint and Power Wash back in late July of this year, 2023. Those are our home service franchise brands. We have spinoff business that we initially launched when we're trying to fill the gaps that were created in Mosquito Joe, being a seasonal business, wanting to keep guys around full calendar year. Like, okay, how do we fill the gap? So we started a home services. Hero Home Services was the name of the company that we started. That was Christmas lights and handyman type stuff. We've shifted and pivoted that brand around a little bit. We still do Christmas lights to facilitate the year-round motion. That actually caused some issues that we didn't think were going to come up, because in Dallas, Texas, you spray when mosquitoes are active, right? And mosquitoes are active if it's above 50 degrees. Well, in DFW, it's above 50 degrees pretty much through Christmas. And so you're actually treating for mosquitoes at the same time you're installing Christmas lights. So that didn't necessarily solve the problem that we were going for. That's just a side note. But the way the team is structured, so I've been partnered with my dad since the beginning. He worked at Apple Computer for 22 years, retired, and wanted to get into franchising. I was working in the inner city and was always very entrepreneurial. He brought me on as 50-50 partners from the very beginning. And so we're still both involved in the business, just different capacities. We have a general manager that right now is structured more towards Groovy. He's probably 85% in Groovy Hughes right now because that business is launching. We brought him in the beginning of this year, to be a field operations manager for Mosquito Joe, knowing that we were going to add the brand, but wanted to make sure he was the right fit in a leadership role. And I hired him knowing what I needed for the bigger organization. I didn't necessarily tell him all the details until he was fully vetted, and it was more of a at first 5-6 month onboarding process before we really integrated him into the bigger picture. Once we get Groovy a little more settled, he'll come back and be ideally 50-50 or over the whole thing. And when and if we decide to bring in another brand, then he might help and assist in the launch of that as well. On the Mosquito Joe side, we have a new field operations supervisor that was our lead tech that we brought up and promoted. He handles all the routing. He helps my CSR office manager in Mosquito Joe do a lot of the admin stuff that if her plate gets too filled. And then I've got 4 technicians that go out and do all my routes, from barrier treatments to servicing misting systems, and the whole gamut of services that we offer. On the Groovy side, it's a little bit different. I've got my general manager over there. We've got a paint foreman, and we're playing around with. We actually just pivoted from a sales guy that we had on the team that let that guy go. It just wasn't the right fit. Great guy, has a lot of industry knowledge, but it always goes back to, right person, right seat. And all relationships are based on timing, and the timing of that one. So I've got a lot of reps with holding people too long. And so that was one where, let me save this relationship, maybe turn this guy into a mentor, partner, collaborator on a different scale, but I can't be paying him every 2 weeks in the way that I was. It doesn't fit in the budget right now. But yeah, man, that's our, I brought my sister-in-law on. She's been killing it as, it's like a virtual executive assistant type to help manage my emails, make sure that all my documents are submitted. Cause I'm not the guy that just sits at the desk all day and submits forms. It's definitely not my strength. So she's been helping out with that quite a bit. So that's the squad, man.
That's the squad. I love it. So, I wanted to start with that question because there's so many directions for us to really go, because you have such a unique business between, in business with your family, right? Specifically starting the business with your dad, owning multiple brands that are through different parent companies, right? You got 3 kids, 6 and under. Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that I want to kind of unpack. And I feel like you giving the overview sets a really good stage. A couple of things already that you mentioned, one being right person, right seat, which is an EOS thing. So we'll hit on that a little bit. Because I feel like there's a lot of people that don't know about EOS and using kind of that overall structure, which can be very effective. So I'm curious. So 8 years ago, you decided to go into Mosquito Joe's. You and your dad started it up. Why home services, and why choose Mosquito Joe's?
So I get multiple emails a week from companies asking to run ads on the podcast. I could have ads if I wanted to, but I don't. So there are 2 ways that you can help to support me and the podcast to keep it ad-free. First is to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, even a smiley face if you have nothing to say. The YouTube algorithm only shows the video to more people based on the likes and comments on the video. So your comment could help someone get exposed to this, and not to sound too cheesy, but it could legitimately change their life. Lastly, go ahead and share this with someone that you think will enjoy this episode. Maybe someone who loves business and entrepreneurial stuff, or maybe it's someone who's been saying that they want to own their own business for forever. You can message it to them directly or share it on your social media. It would mean the world to me. You guys rock. Enjoy.
Very good question. So I'll be very clear. And I always, whenever I tell the story, I had nothing to do with the decision to go into Mosquito Joe. I didn't play that role. I was working in the inner city, coaching background, educator, just got a heart for kids in the inner city. That's what I was doing. My dad, as he was going through the retirement process, was looking at brands. And honestly, we didn't have a consultant. We didn't have a guide. We didn't have somebody that was helping us through the process. The big thing for him was he saw a need. He saw himself as the ideal customer for the service. He saw it as, it's recurring. There's just a huge demand for it. And that was it. That's what he thought. And I'm going to go into it. And there's a lot of things that I think hindsight 2020, we might have looked at things differently, maybe not picking a different brand, because Mosquito Joe has been phenomenal for us. Every system has its flaws, and Mosquito Joe is not perfect. Neighborly is not perfect. But man, I've learned so much through the process of being a franchisee. I mean, I was 25 years old. I got married on March 12th, 2016. My dad flew my wife and I out to Virginia Beach for corporate training up at Buzz Franchise Brands on March 13th, 2016.
Your
So it
honeymoon
was
was franchise training?
boom, boom. We went right into it, man. We ended up having a real honeymoon a few months later, but that's a whole other crazy story. We were like 3 months into the business, and my wife's like, all right, we're going on a trip, and we've got 30 customers that are paying us to come out. And then our neighbor franchisee opens, and turns out 18 of those 30 are in his zip code. And so we go from 30 to 12, and my wife's like, we got to go. Like, but no, I can't. So that's another podcast, man. But yeah, I didn't have I didn't have a choice in that, but I wanted to be involved. I've always entrepreneurial, and he picked me up, plopped me down, and said, go.
What was that conversation like in the initial agreement and beginning? You guys are launching the business together. Like, what was the expectation in terms of the roles? Was it like, all right, here, Matthew, you're running the business, or I'm going to be involved too? Or what did that look like in terms of the initial expectations that you guys had set?
Good question. Yeah. So my dad was essentially, I think his initial mindset was, hey, I'm retired and I'm going to put my money into this asset. You're going to run it. I'm going to make you a 50-50 partner. I'm not going to, I'll fill in where I'm needed from a financial backing. And it was anything that you do in the day to day running the business, I'll pay you, you'll get paid hourly. Anything that comes in that's an owner type role, that'll come in on the back end when we make profit. And so, if you want to get paid, you got to go in and just work and get your hands in the business. And so my wife and I we did everything. That structure lasted the first season, but then we came to off season and there was just nothing to do. So it was okay. Well, I need to change the structure. So at that point, I was on salary and just continued to operate the day to day. My dad became involved in 2018 when we acquired 2 neighboring territories. We went from about 180 to 200 customers to about 600 customers overnight. And it's like, okay, I need some extra help here. We need more hands on deck for
you
now.
Guys bought 2. So how many territories do you own of Mosquito Joe's now? 3?
We currently own 4.
4.
At that point, we had 6 because we started with 4, went up to 6, dropped down to 4, and ideally we'll sit at 2. I have 2 territories right now that are up for sale. Well, my entire business, it's always for sale. That's my mindset with these things. I'm buying them, I'm building them up, and then I can pivot at any moment. That's the vertical integration model. And I have the bigger picture, the operating team, and then I've got structure within each brand. That's at least the idea. But to answer your question, we've got the 4. 2 we'd like to keep, the 2 that we acquired in 2018, and then our lower 2 producers, they're great territories, they're just really far away, and that's something that if we could go back, we would have structured our initial purchase different. We weren't as crazy as you across the country, but in the nature of this business in Mosquito Joe is all about density and limiting your windshield time. I can send I've got 4 technicians out right now today while I'm talking to you. They're doing 14 to 18 treatments each, and they're all in the same neighborhood for the most part. where back in 2016, I could do personally 8 to 12 houses a day. It would take me about 8 hours. It would be all over the Metroplex for all intents and purposes. And I was helping my wife answer the phone, and I was trying to do networking.
It wasn't efficient. Yeah, that's a really good point there, and you hit on something, because I was going to ask you, like, hindsight being 2020, what would you have done differently, or what would have changed? What would you have changed? And it's a good point. It's something that people don't think about, I think, sometimes, especially as they, maybe they're looking at a brand that they really like, they get really excited about, and it, just so happens that, okay, hey, your neighboring territories, not available. The franchisor is like, well, hey, we got this other territory. And, I generally tell people don't do anything more than 30 minutes out. And honestly, I think that's dependent upon the business too, right? Because even with some businesses that might be even a little bit tighter. So I think that's a really huge lesson there. And
I saw your post. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
So I saw your post about that, the 30 minutes. I don't know maybe that was a week or so ago. And man, that hit spot on. And you're also, another thing too, it does depend on the nature of the business. I think if we would have just been able to, even from the beginning, I tried to join multiple chambers, I think 3 or 4. And now when I talk to people, if you're going to get involved in something like a chamber of commerce, where the benefit comes in going deep into it, not just wide. You got to go deep, man. You got to join leadership. You got to be consistent. You got to hit the extra meetings, be an ambassador. You can't do that when you're, anybody listening that's familiar with DFW. I mean, I was in Rockwall, Garland, Waxahachie, and then our most southern territories down in Waco. And that's what we started with. And that was a lot. It burned out my capacity pretty quick.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you have that, hey, get it, you can, sell at in time mindset, because especially with home services, I don't think it's as applicable with retail, but home services is interesting, where the barrier to entry in some of them can be so low in terms of what you can get it rocking and rolling for. A lot of the times a franchise fee is the biggest part of the startup cost. Right?
Sure.
It's financing the vehicles, not purchasing it outright. And what's interesting, I mean, if you can get it up and going, like the what you can sell it for, kind of the value prop as a resale, if it's really rocking and rolling, could definitely be interesting in proportion to what you can get it started for. So I think that's an interesting point. So here's one of the things I want to hit on, like, what is that? A lot of people have this year one mindset, right? Where it's so, they're transitioning from the corporate world, right? Like, you guys' situation was a little unique, but so many folks, they're wanting to leave a job they're not happy with, they're not fulfilled, they want to be an entrepreneur, they have a family to support, right? And so they're so focused on, what can I make in year one? What was that like for you, and what kind of growth did you see? Like, you were grinding, which I love. I tell people to go full time if you can. You can always get a job later. But what kind of growth did you see between like year one versus year 3? And what would you tell someone who is so focused on the short-term success as opposed to what they can do in year 3 to year 5?
Well, man, so the great quote is, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we significantly underestimate what we can do in a decade. And it's crazy.
Tony Robbins, baby.
Okay, there it is. Let's go. Yeah, I was just going to leave that with a ... at the end. I appreciate that. But man, yeah, year one, it was me in one truck, and I had my brother-in-law, his buddy from high school, came and rode with me maybe 60% of the time. We did 996 treatments that year, but I did every single one of them myself. except for the week that I got to shout out my dad. The week that I was gone on my real honeymoon, he came through, and we came back with like 50 customers. And so he hit it and then went back to Austin. So I've been telling him he's the secret to the success in Mosquito Joe since the very beginning. I got to get him in here more often. And that's what his role is more now. But year 2, we got our second truck. And I had 2 guys that were in the same kind of friend group in high school, and they would rotate. And I barely got to the point where I had one of them or the other one could ride in that second truck. And then one of them could ride with me. By the end of that summer, I had both of them riding in the truck. And so I was able to do more operating, the marketing stuff, working on the business, following up with customers. I'd always really dove in hard in the networking scene from the very beginning, but because of my nature of being in the work, it would always, whenever I had to hop on route, it would always pull me out. But
how did you see that when you made that shift from being the tech, right, to being very much in the business, to then having guys that were doing it and you started working more on the business, on the marketing, et cetera? Sure. How did the business change then? Did you see a dramatic difference in the growth, or what happened then?
So there's our business, especially Mosquito Joe, well, the whole business has experienced some very significant evolutions over the years. Like, yes, there's been gradual progress over time, but there's always been very significant shifts in the business. In 2018, so year 3, in April, May, we acquired the 2 additional territories. And so now I inherited 400 customers plus a lead tech. So now I have somebody that I can balance some of this management stuff off to, but now I have multiple people. I still would find myself operating in the truck. Last year was actually the last time I was on route. I've made it all the way to October, and I haven't got on route this year in 2023, year 8. Last year, I was in the truck one day, and the technician whose route it was, that was his last day. And I say that as like, obviously, it could be taken as like cutthroat, but I've always leaned into mentor over fire, and we'd built up the team, and that person had so many chances, and it was a testament to the team. Like, if Matt, at this point in the game, if Matthew has to get on route, we had 7 routes and maybe 10 technicians. So the fact that I had to get on the route that day was kind of a big deal and kind of a last, a final push. One of the biggest shifts that we saw, though, was the way that we operate with EOS now. We implemented EOS back in it would have been July of last year. And the turnover that 10 to 12 technicians for 7 routes. We had no true leader. I had multiple people in the office, and we did about the same in revenue the year before. This year, we sold 2 territories. I've got 4 technicians. I've got better leadership structure. The team is pretty much completely rolled over, and our profitability has just gotten significantly better.
Just from a structural and how you run the business standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, with Mosquito Joe, what we realized was we were way too thin, and we still are. I've got a tech going down to Waco right now. That's 5 hours windshield time of no production. It's a phenomenal territory, but unless we get somebody down there that can operate it locally, which is possible, we've had plans to do that. My personal life has kind of taken me to where I don't necessarily have the capacity, and that's why we're kind of, struggling there. We made the decision, let's just cut all the fat. Let's focus on, Pareto principle, 80-20. We've got these 2 territories that are literally providing us 88% of our revenue and probably 45% of our expenses. So you've got the other 12% and 50 to 60% of your expenses on this other side. Let's just cut it. We don't need to be the biggest. Let's focus on being the best in this lane. And so now, we've kind of gone through these different stages, and I'm not necessarily needed in the day-to-day of the business anymore. I have multiple layers to where there's going to be a lot of people hopping in a truck before me at this point. Well, a couple, but enough. And we still have ways to go, though. Like we're still not there fully.
Yeah, I've heard this so many times with business owners in terms of, it's a work smarter, not harder mentality. And it's also a testament to when people see resales that are on the market and they may be, underperforming, and people get, nervous
Mm-hmm.
about it. And sometimes it is just really a logistical thing where it's like, hey, we're not there to operate really in that market. That's not what we're focusing on. And that represents an opportunity to someone else in terms of what they might be able to scoop that up for and really
100%.
come in and get their hands dirty, and get it rocking and rolling. So, but those decisions come from really knowing your business, knowing the numbers, right? And understanding that.
Right.
And for people listening, EOS is the Entrepreneur Operating System, which is like a model and framework in which to run a business off of, how to structure it, how to have an accountability chart, which is different from, an org chart, et cetera. We use some of EOS. We don't use the full model in our business now. We use the leadership structure. Have you seen the
Nice.
did you guys actually hire someone from EOS, or you've read like the books and stuff and then implemented that?
So I've got the books on repeat on Audible. So that's the thing about me, man. If you give me the blueprint and you just show me what I got to do, I got to read that book, I got to learn those skills. All right, bet, let's go. So I haven't hired an EOS implementer. I have become friends with multiple, and that's the brand. That's Streetwise. How do I level up? Well, let me use the resources that are in my room and around me. I was networking with a guy. Shout out Jeff Schaefer. I've had him on my podcast. He's great, but he's an EOS implementer. He's in my networking group, and I reached out to him and just coffee, talking, and become friends. And he's a mentor of mine now. So I tell him all the time, I joke around, I feel bad because I don't actually pay you, but he's offered so much help and assistance and guidance, and he's just been a blessing to me. So testament to, man, just if you find somebody, I mean, the fact that we're talking right now, if you find somebody that you see has value that can help you level up, man, just shoot your shot. Like, reach out. There's no telling what can come from just reaching out and saying, what's up? Hey, man, I love what you're doing. How you do it? Holler at me. Tell me, how can I be like you, man? And that's kind of what I did with him.
Yeah, from a place of value too. Like when we connected, you're like, "Hey, man, will you come on the podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to." I think where sometimes it becomes challenging is when people reach out and they're asking with no value prop for the other person.
Sure.
Right?
There's a difference between being a leech and being a value adder, right? So with EOS, we had to define our core values. Well, value adder, problem solver is core value number 3. So anything you get with me, if I'm in the room, I'm going to add value the best I can. And if there's problems, I'm going to help provide solutions to the problems. And I think that's big. So thank you for making that point. It's not just about, hey, man, can I learn from you?
Yeah.
But it's, okay, how can we collaborate?
It would have been very different if you would have sent me a message like, "Hey, man, can I pick your brain?" The question that drives me the craziest. I mean, look, I am all about adding value. I make so much content for free. I pretty much respond to almost every email that gets sent to me. I have the heart of a teacher. I want to help, but I think sometimes people don't understand that every couple of minutes towards you is time away from family, is time away from business, is time away. And people come just wanting to get their questions answered, but hey, can I just hop on a call with you real quick? Can I just, and it's like, where's the value exchange, right? Because what you're doing is you're just asking for something. And so I think it's interesting. I think it's important for people to know when listening to approach people to like, how do you get someone's attention, right? And you're like, hey man, I'd love to have you on the podcast and I'd love to just connect with you and get in your circle. I'm like, cool, sold, I'm in.
Yeah.
Instant
Let's go.
rapport, instant connection, right? And so it's like cool, but I think it's all about the way that you frame it. By the way, did you know that EOS is a franchise? I didn't know that until recently.
I did. So a part of the conversation was because likewise, man, I come from a bloodline of teachers. Educating is in my soul. And so the concept of becoming an EOS implementer was so intriguing to me. And that's pretty much how I started the conversation was, what was your journey like being an EOS implementer? Because I'm interested. And through that process, I've learned that it is a franchise. Super interesting. They've changed the model. They changed the model from how it was in the beginning, which I think is pretty cool too. But yeah.
I didn't know that until someone on my team had brought it up, and they were like, "Did you know EOS was a franchise?" I was like, I had no idea. Have you seen their EOS One platform? Do you use that?
I don't use it.
They have EOS One dashboard, and it's free. And you can run the whole L10 meeting structure. It has the scorecard, rocks, headlines, to-dos, issues, VTO accountability chart. After we stop recording, I'll show you. And it's free, free system dashboard. It's amazing.
That's interesting. So, okay, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this or not. We can always go back, I guess. I'm writing the EOS One down. So a part of Horsepower, one of the things that attracted me to those guys, and I was like, okay, my next brand, I'm gonna pick a brand with Horsepower brands. All their marketing, they talk about running on EOS and educating on EOS. They have a platform that's synonymous. I mean, you're talking running at level 10s. They changed the name of it though. So I'm interested if there was an issue there with how they were operating, but I'm going to check out EOS One. I'm going to see if it's compatible to the one that they've provided for me.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, dashboards and numbers are key. Actually, right now, so we use the EOS One dashboard for our leadership team meetings and stuff. But actually, right now, we have this giant spreadsheet we use to track KPIs, and we track, I think, like 15 to 18 different metrics, because this whole business with YouTube and the online stuff, I had to build the whole ship from scratch. There was no model, there's no template. Yeah. But we're actually looking at KPI dashboards right now. Actually, my team is researching and doing comparison stuff, and there's some pretty cool stuff out there. This is the stuff that I nerd out on, but
it's really cool.
The average person franchising gives them so much more of a leg up in terms of there's the blueprint. Do you think you could have built the business that you've built with the structures and the systems, if 8 years ago you went backwards and just started it from scratch?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast episode so far. One of the most consistent things that we hear from people that reach out to us is that buying a franchise feels really confusing. There's so many options out there. It's a scary decision. They don't know how to vet or do the due diligence or really narrow down on the right franchise for them, and then they really feel alone in the process. You might be the only one in your family who's ever pursued buying a franchise or being an entrepreneur, or maybe you've tried to start a side hustle before, or other businesses like me. Before franchising, I was not able to crack the code on entrepreneurship. I'd like to invite you to reach out and work with us. We've helped many clients buy franchises, get them profitable, or buy resale businesses that are thriving. I'm talking about highly profitable resales, great value. We've allowed many of our clients to actually quit their job right away and replace their income immediately. So if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise, doing due diligence, vetting it, or resale, then go ahead and go to tarzjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. All right, enjoy the rest of the episode.
That's a very easy no for me. I'm big on personality assessments, and not to like put myself in a box, but the one that I really like is the Working Genius with so Pat Lencioni, Table Group, those guys. Talk about your 6 working geniuses: wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enabling, and tenacity. Right? Those are your 6 possible working geniuses. The concept is 2 of them are your working geniuses, 2 of them are your working competencies, and 2 of them are your working failures. So 2 of those, if you're caught doing the bottom 2, you're getting holes poked in your cup nonstop. It's draining you. The middle 2 are 2 that you can do, you might be good at, but they're not fulfilling. And then the top 2 are, your most fulfilling thing. Invention is one of my bottom things. If you just sit here and tell me to create, I'm not the best creator in the whole wide world, but you show me a blueprint. Like I said earlier, if you show me what I need to do to improve basketball, I was not a good basketball player growing up, but if I can go sit in a lesson, it's like, all right, I hit this drill like this. Oh, I get my elbow tucked in here. I played cornerback in college football. And again, I was always a decent athlete, very fast, but not as athletic as some of these other guys. But you sit here and work these drills with me, I can learn and I can get better. And I did. It's the same way in business ownership for me. Show me what I need to do, and then I just got to execute. You tell me, okay, so I build my team like this. Okay, lead generation works if you add this plus that and then bring a little bit of that in there. And in order to be a good manager, you talk to people like this. Try not to do that. All right, now I just got to add my little flavor to it and let's go. The thing for me is, as I grow and expand, do I continue to operate in the franchise lane? Is there still value for me in the franchise lane versus kind of cutting, pivoting, and pulling a Tarek and doing your thing? And honestly, just personally right now, I'm leaning more towards your direction with what I'm doing in consulting and coaching and making content, but it's had to be a gradual shift. But there's no possible way I would have been able to do what I'm doing now. I mean, without the mentorship of other franchisees, you kidding me? Like, that's where I learned that I could reach out to people, because in a franchise system, you've got other people doing the same thing you're doing. 40% of them are upset. And so they want to see if you're still upset. And so they'll just gossip with you. And then the top ones, they want to raise the ship. So they want to make you, if you're eager and willing, especially me being youngest one in the room for a long time, I'm not anymore, but they're willing to mentor. They want to mentor. I wouldn't have got there without it.
Man, I want to jump on that real quick, because man, this is some of what I talk to some of our folks about, which is stay away from the people that aren't doing good and they want to just talk to you to complain, because they're always there. And the reality is, look, it doesn't matter what franchise system you're in. It doesn't matter if it's Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or some of the biggest brands. You have top performers, you have middle performers, and you have unit stores, locations that are closing in every single brand, every single one. So there's always going to be kind of the middle and lower part of the pack that they will have probably very good reasons as to why it's not working, or blaming externally of, hey, you're not doing this, franchise door's not doing this, et cetera, et cetera. But focusing that attention on that versus learning from the people who are doing well. Can you talk about your experience with that in terms of,
man,
like, because it's so easy to go the other way and just start complaining, gossiping with the folks that are struggling, right?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to, I mean, on a big macro level, it's all about mindset and protecting your mindset and protecting your purpose, just protecting your soul. And if you put yourself around people that have a scarcity mindset and are just pessimistic in nature and complainers in nature, it's going to it's gonna steal your soul. It's gonna suck you dry. So that's just in general. In my experience, I've been blessed in that, DFW, we've got our neighboring franchisee is always in the top 5. And I know that if he has something to complain about, it's a real thing. And all this other nonsense, I don't even have to listen to it. So for me, it was easy because I got Big Brother right there. And from the beginning, he was willing to help me out. And he was the first person, him and his wife were the first person that I called, Lee and Holly Woodham. Shout out, man. They're on the other side of the Metroplex. They're killing the game in Mosquito Joe. And I just know as a mentor, as a father, as a husband, I can reach out to that guy about anything. But you got these Facebook groups and you just see people that are struggling, and their struggles are real. But again, core values. My core value number 2 is extreme ownership. Came from the book, Extreme Ownership. Leif Babin and Jocko Willink. I read the book, but it's extreme ownership. Everything that happens in your sphere comes back to you.
That's one of our core values.
Good. That's awesome because it's so important. Here's an example though about me. I'll try to make this one quick. I did a validation call for Groovy, and I tried to keep it positive. I tried to keep it real because I am self-proclaimed the people's champ. Like, I'm about the people. I care about the people. I'm going to tell you about my experience, and I'm going to help educate you so you can level yourself up as well. It's just my nature. So on the validation call, I tried to keep it real. But with Groovy, we're having a slower start because we're doing it differently than other franchisees who just completely focused. They literally just quit their job, and now all they have to do to put food on the table is to build this business. That's not necessarily us. We're getting a slower start. We're having struggles that other franchisees aren't having. I might not be the best person to hop on a validation call with because my situation in Groovy is not going to be I'll tell you about the brand. I'll tell you about how I think you should build it up. I'll give you very specific examples of what my struggles have been and how you can do it differently. But I'm not necessarily the example of if you're going to come in and just, knock it out of the park and, just kill it. I haven't seen it yet. And I know why. We have to continue to work through it and build off of just the situation that we put ourselves in. But it's key. And you said it, but it's key in just knowing who you're talking to and what perspective are they coming from, right? Like, I'll always try to educate and then bring it back to me and what my team is doing and what we're not doing and why. But it just doesn't do anybody any good to dog on the franchise system and point fingers, just as much as you've got people from the franchise side that are, selling roses, and it just might not be that pretty. So I think there's definitely a balance there in the middle.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I was just on our weekly group call that we do every week with our clients. I was just talking about this and doing validation, and that now more than ever, number one, you need to talk to 5 to 10 franchisees at minimum. Sure. 5 to 10. Yeah. Not 3 to 5 anymore. You need to talk to 5 to 10, and you need to understand that frame, which is, okay, are they full-time in the business? Did they start out full-time in the business? Are they absentee in the business? At what point did they pivot? What's the difference? Like, you need to understand those different frames when you're talking to people and doing the validation. And I think people just stumble through validation, asking questions, not without that frame. And then also, maybe you have 2 validation calls. You just so happen to have 2 people that maybe are struggling. Maybe there's another 8 who are doing well, but you never get to talk to the other ones because after you talk to the first couple, you get spooked, right? So I just think validation is so important, and having a bunch of conversations. And yeah, I just think that's super, super important. So I want to hit on this, which is, so you own Groovy, you own Mosquito Joe's. not only are they two different brands, they're two different brands with two different parent companies. Mosquito Joe is Neighborly, Groovy is Horsepower Brands. So what was that decision-making process like, as opposed to, because you could have diversified and become multi-brand with Neighborly, which from an operational perspective maybe would have been more efficient. I don't know. You tell me. But what really drove that decision to separate that out? And hindsight being 2020, how do you feel about that strategy?
Man, hindsight 2020. Goodness gracious. I probably would do things a little bit differently, to be honest. I can dive into that if we've got time. But the brands that I was looking at, the things that I wanted to do, the way that I wanted to incorporate, the structure on the map that I wanted to have, it just didn't fully line up to where, all right, I'm going to dive into another Neighborly brand. I talked to some of the Neighborly brand folks and we thought about it, but I also wasn't, as a franchisee, you don't know what other, maybe the grass is always greener. Maybe let me see what some other umbrella companies, parent companies are doing. Maybe I'm not sold on Neighborly forever. Maybe I want to diversify a little bit and see what these other guys are doing. The biggest reason, and it might have been, I'm still figuring out if it was a good one or not, but probably the biggest reason was, for me personally, I'm trying to grow in the franchising space. I'm not just a franchisee. And for a long time, I was the mosquito guy, right? When I'm doing my local networking, and something shifted in my mind. Well, I'm not the mosquito guy anymore. And now I'm not just a franchisee. I'm trying to build myself in the space to be much bigger than just a franchisee. At the time, I thought in order to do that, I needed to see what other guys were doing, and then I could compare and contrast. Operationally, man, it is the feces hitting the rotating oscillator right now, man. It's pretty crazy. I wish I would have made it a little more simple than how I set myself up. I'm not going to front or lie to you. But I am getting a lot of knowledge, and I'm figuring a lot of stuff out. Now, will we crash and burn? Lord knows, man. I say my prayers every day. I put one foot in front of the other. I tie my shoes and we go. But yeah, man, I could go into that. I think a lot of it was good, and I'm glad we did it. And a lot of it, man, I would just do a lot differently. I think I'd structure myself. A lot of my mindset, I think the reason why I started the second was a little skewed, and it's something that is just so important for your listeners, the people that you coach, the people that I'm going to go back and talk to. You have to know your why. And if your why is skewed, if it's bastardized in any way, I don't know if that's a bad word or not, but if it's altered and if it's not pure, you're going to come across hardships no matter what. But when you do, you're not going to be ready to solve them because you weren't pure from the beginning. So once you hit it, your why, it might not be strong enough to push you over that edge. And I just think that's so important.
Yeah. Do you think in this situation, and I love how transparent you are. It's really awesome because these are the kind of conversations I enjoy. And I think people need, the more open the conversations can be, instead of everyone trying to paint a glamorous picture, it allows, it puts you in the position to make empowered decisions. It's kind of like what, another thing that I tell our group is that, okay, as an example, if I just walked up to you and just punched you in the stomach, you weren't expecting it. I just, I'd probably knock the air out of you, right? Because you weren't expecting it. But if I said, hey, I'm going to punch you, and you flexed up, the impact, it probably wouldn't knock the wind out of you because you were prepared for it. And so the reality,
I'm going to tell you, man, you're going to have to put some ice on your hand, man. You give me a second. You have to put some, I got a hardcore, brother.
Yeah, I'm not messing with you, man. But the point of the analogy is to be prepared for it to be hard, and then you just set yourself up for, for success in just a totally, different way. But to go back to it, so are you saying that you feel like part of your why in then going to the other brand wasn't pure in the sense of like there were other external reasons? Is that kind of what you're alluding to in that situation?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I appreciate you calling out just kind of my vibe. I never want to articulate my thoughts and my experience in a way that paints a picture that would lead somebody else astray. I've done that, and I've just seen lives be ruined by a facade that's not real. And so I try my best now to just keep it real. But yeah, that's, another thing. So I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, 100%. I just didn't think through everything. I was rushing. I was trying to solve an immediate problem, and I rushed through the process. I had boxes that I wanted to check. I was attracted to systems and the way that they're presented. I had advice, people telling me to, not do it, maybe slow down a little bit. But because I needed to solve a problem, well, this is my solution, and I'm a problem solver. Like, don't get in my way from solving a problem. It's where the strength can become a weakness if you're not aware of it and you're not self-aware. And in that season, I wasn't fully self-aware. So yeah, now we're experiencing things, growing pains of adding a second brand, of having a slightly slower launch. And we have to come back to, man, was this the right choice? How far do we continue to push forward? And it's nothing against the brand. The team is great. There's people successful, and we have the potential to be successful. The question is, do we have the capacity for it? And am I structured to move this organization in the way that it needs to be? And it was the decision so my wife's family all went to Baylor, which is Baylor University down in Waco, Texas. I almost went to Baylor myself. I pivoted, went to Wheaton College. My wife is one of the few that didn't go to Baylor. She also went to Wheaton College. So Baylor and Waco is a special place. Before we started having so many babies, we were going to go live in Waco for a little bit and build that business up. Started having babies. Lost a baby in 2019, which was a pivotal moment to our story and our journey. But Waco has a special place, and it was an emotional thing that we wanted to hold on to it. We love being business owners in Waco. But will the business be more successful if it's owned and operated by somebody, specifically that brand, where it's very heavy on community engagement? Not all brands are heavy on community engagement. Mosquito Joe is. So if you can be involved in the community, you have a truck when you drive into the grocery store and you're picking up your kids in a branded vehicle every day, it makes an impact. The community will be better if Mosquito Joe is owned by a resident of Waco or somebody who has the capacity to be in Waco every single day. The customers will be better. Neighborly will be better because their royalty checks will be higher. It's just a better situation. And you've got to be able to let go of the emotion in that and look at it from, just what's best. So I can take that as an isolated moment and now expand it to, hindsight 2020 with everything that I've done.
Yeah, man, I love all of that. And what's interesting, I would imagine you're probably pretty high D in a disc profile. Yeah. I would imagine probably high D, high I. Have you taken a disc?
Yeah, I'm actually. Is it possible to be ID?
Oh, you're higher I.
Or is it always DI? Yeah, last time I took it, it said ID.
That makes sense. Yep. Okay. So yeah, I is in terms of like influence, fun, kind of life of the party, which is definitely the vibe that you give off. So I could see higher I than D. And so yeah, that's a part of that personality style is moving too quickly and not being as focused on the details. And that's why understanding personality style and strengths and weaknesses are, it's so key. And not only the decision-making process of the business, but how to run the business and make those decisions. And everything that I've learned and it's hard because I have the tug is focus on one thing, focus on one thing, focus on one thing. And man, it's so hard. So I don't know that I've really shared this on the podcast or publicly, but in the last year or so, year and a half, my wife and I have almost pulled the trigger 2 or 3 times on some franchise opportunities. But like right before right at the end, it was just like, do we really have the capacity for this? That became the question. Can we really invest the time into this? And the answer was no. And so as much as I wanted to do it, right? Because it's been, I sold the stores off, and ever since, haven't owned the franchise, right? People ask me, why don't you own franchises anymore? As if it's like this big conspiracy, you know, and, you know, I think one, it's important for people to understand franchising is a vehicle. So, and just like you might switch houses and move from house to house. So you might buy a different car. Like, don't get too attached on the vehicle, right? If you know your why, as you're saying, the why is to be an entrepreneur, create a legacy, provide for your family, have flexibility. You may have different seasons of owning different types of businesses. And so at times I felt this pressure of, man, I got to get back to owning, you know, a franchise to kind of solve for this. Tarek, why don't you own anything anymore? And so each time I was kind of leading, the primary energy was leading with the wrong thing. And so fortunately, you know, just from a pure capacity standpoint, I mean, I have 1,480 emails in my inbox right now. So just from a pure capacity standpoint, it's like I'm drowning in the work that I already have. There's no chance that I can take on more. But I think it's so crucial to focus on one thing until you can really then like really dive in. And it's hard because it's the natural tendency is to want to kind of do something else or add on.
Yeah, 100%. With us, it was the launch. So you had the initial problem that needed to get solved, but it wasn't the initial problem that we thought it was like 3 levels deeper than that. And just taking the time to, you know, break down like, okay, where does that one problem actually come from? And for me, it was being real and true to A, who I am, and B, what do I feel the most fulfillment doing? What do I enjoy the most in my day? I'm on track to getting burnt out in what I'm doing. So I need to change, but I also need to restructure this organization, and it just needs a little bit more. And I want to create some growth opportunities, and we have the means, and let's go for it because I need to solve this, and here's how. But if I would have just acknowledged the fact that, didn't you say first that you were a little burnt out by this and that you already are thinking about something else that you're doing and that you've been doing and that you've building and you just want to take it to a higher level? Why don't you just look at that and just put all your eggs there rather than trying to launch multiple things at the same time where, you know, of course, the goal was to get Groovy Hughes to the point where Mosquito Joe is, but do it in a fraction of the time. And I wanted a proof of concept to show like, okay, I've taken one brand and I've built it out like this. Let's do it to another. And then we can build a team that does multiple, right? And yeah, that just might not have been the wisest thing to do based on the capacity that I had if I was honest with where my mind was at the time. So, you know, I say all this. Does that mean that, you know, my business is flopping and I'm going to walk away? No, absolutely not. We're selling jobs, you know, right now. We just completed a production job. I mean, it's definitely a grind. And like I said, we're starting a little bit slower than I would have wanted to, but we're still going to grind this thing out and we're still going to grow it. Does that mean that I'm looking at opportunities that maybe I need to sell it sooner than I did? And that if somebody's listening to the podcast and loves Groovy Hughes and the concept and they live in DFW, would I have a conversation with them? Absolutely. Absolutely. But, you just got to keep the options open. You got to be real with, what you got in front of you. Because you said it already. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. Franchising has been a beautiful thing for me personally, for my development, for what I see in communities across the nation, man, and just the opportunity that it gives people to own their own business, to learn, to collaborate with other people and build something. It's outstanding. It's outstanding.
Yeah, for sure, man. Cool. Well, we're gonna have to do a round 2 at some point because there's some stuff that I wanted to hit on that we didn't get to hit on, but I think we're running out of time. But
yeah,
man, it was so awesome. I love this this conversation. For folks who are just kind of getting into franchising, what would be like a parting piece of advice that you would give them?
Just getting into franchising, dive deep into the system, meet your franchisees, meet your neighboring franchisees. Those might be the people that, you become best friends with. You might acquire their business. They might acquire your business. These are your people. Meet them, be friends, kill with kindness, lead with kindness at all times. Franchising, you get people from all walks of life. People are very different. Sometimes we get our feelings hurt if we respond out of killing with kindness. Man, it's crazy what can happen. And then the last thing, man, be engaged and involved in your community and your business and develop people. Build your leaders. You didn't just spend all that dang money to buy yourself a job. If you did, great, that's cool, go kill it. But for the most part, you're trying to build an asset. So build and develop people and get up out of there. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome, man. Well, Matthew, thanks for coming on, and we'll drop all your links and stuff like that for people that want to follow or listen to your podcast, et cetera. But yeah, appreciate it. Until next time, man.
And Dark, appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Likewise.